What's the most mind-blowing and mesmerizing science fact not much people know about? You can build a device at home for about $30 to see subatomic particles. It's called a cloud chamber, and muons from cosmic rays, or alpha particles from americium taken from a smoke detector will leave trails of condensation that you can see with your own eyes. You have probably heard that there are more stars in the universe than grains of sand on Earth. But what I find more amazing is that there are more atoms in a single grain of sand than grains of sand on Earth. Just shows you how small they really are. I hate atoms. They're rough and coarse, and they get everywhere. Near the center of the Milky Way, there's a dust cloud known as Sagittarius B2. This dust cloud is really big, almost 150 light-years across, and has a mass about 3 million times that of the Sun. Spectrographic analysis has shown what it's made of, and it has fairly high concentrations of both ethanol, which is what gives you the buzz when you make a cocktail, and ethyl formate, a compound which has a distinct smell of rum, and is also one of the compounds that gives raspberries their taste. If you could condense it down to a level where it was detectable, then, the center of the galaxy would smell not dissimilar to a raspberry daiquiri. This sounds like something straight out of Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. God's rum stash. If Betelgeuse, a fairly nearby giant star, goes supernova, it will light up our sky for 2 months. The really freaky thing is that if it went supernova today, because of its distance, the light wouldn't reach the Earth for over 600 years. Man, if I could wish for any single once-in-a-lifetime event to witness, it would be this one. Even crazier to think that for us to witness it, it would have had to have already happened 630 years ago. I hope this happens. It'd be one of the most profound things to ever happen in my life. I envy our ancestors that would see crazy illuminated skies with zero light pollution. I bet many stories and get-togethers have been had in the past where groups of people just laid in fields and just stared at the sky, wondering what is going on, something that seems all too distant today. Knowing what we know today makes us emotional looking up at the sky, the scale and existentialism and all. I wonder what hunter-gatherers thought when things like gravity and planets wasn't common knowledge. The mass of the Sun makes up 99.98% of the total mass of our solar system. And Jupiter takes up most of the remaining mass. Sharks existed before trees. And grass, right? Grass wasn't around either. All those dino movies with lush grassy floors. IT wasn't there. Mud World. Not only that, the reason we have coal is because microbes hadn't evolved to eat wood. So trees evolved before there was anything that could break them down when they died. If you take two different types of metal and hold them together in space, they will bond together in a process called cold welding. I loved how a friend of mine explained it. Then the two metals touch and there is nothing in between. So the electrons start going out for a walk and they become confused because they don't know where one piece of metal ends and where the other one begins. So they wander around both and boom, now it is just one piece of metal because the electrons don't know where they are. Related to that, if you take two separate pieces of the same metal, and have them be ridiculously pure, you can then at the atomic level slap them together and the crystal, lattice, structure will just automatically bind. When there's nothing to stop a chemical from binding with itself, it will do so. On average, the closest planet to Earth is Mercury. The same is true for every other planet in the solar system. I love CGP Grey videos. Haven't seen this one? Amazing. I will use this information to assert my intellectual dominance at gatherings. Humans are bioluminescent and glow in the dark, but the light that we emit is 1,000 times weaker than our human eyes are able to pick up. Poor humans. Their glow is so lovely. Yep. Teenage Mutant Ninja ass breathers. This is what I came here for. The images your eyes give are 1/100th of a second in the past. Edit, because of the time it takes your brain to process inputs from all senses. what is happening in front of you is 1/100th of a second behind. Yeah, it's crazy how the present doesn't actually exist. Now I'm mentally breaking down. Thanks my dude, I really needed that. Water can boil and freeze at the same time. It's called the triple point, and it occurs when the temperature and pressure is just right for the three phases, gas, liquid, and solid, of a substance to coexist in thermodynamic equilibrium. If you could create a sound that measured 1,100 decibels, you'd create a black hole whose event horizon would exceed the diameter of the galaxy. I'm just reading Bill Bryson's new book The Body, a guide for occupants, and every single page contains mind-blowing and mesmerizing facts. To wit, for each visual input, it takes a tiny but perceptible amount of time, about 200 milliseconds, 1/5 of a second, for the information to travel along the optic nerves and into the brain to be processed and interpreted. 1/5 of a second is not a trivial span of time when a rapid response is required, to step back from an oncoming car, say, or to avoid a blow to the head. To help us deal better with this fractional lag, the brain does a truly extraordinary thing. It continuously forecasts what the world will be like 1/5 of a second from now, and that is what it gives us as the present. That means that we never see the world as it is at this very instant, but rather as it will be a fraction of a moment in the future. We spend our whole lives, in other words, living in a world that doesn't quite exist yet. You can't feel the temperature of things you touch. Scenario: you take a shower, once you are done you step on a carpet. It does not feel cold, but you step on the floor, usually ceramic, it feels cold, but both objects were in the bathroom as you showered and so they both are at room temperature. What you feel then is the heat transfer from you to the object, one being a bad transfer because of the pockets of air in the carpet and the other being a very good transfer with the floor. So what do you really feel? What can you really tell from touch? So what do you really feel? What can you really tell from touch? You can feel the heat energy traveling through your skin at the point of contact, determine the direction of energy flow, and get a pretty good idea of the rate of energy flow. Pretty useful, if you ask me, just not as a tool for absolute measurement. Similarly, you've never actually touched anything in your entire life. The electrons in both your body and the other object repel each other before you can make physical contact, so you only ever feel that force from the electrons, not the object itself. There's a number called Graham's number, which is the upper bound to a mathematical problem. It's also a really, really big number. And by really big, I mean special notation was derived just to write the damn number. It is so unbelievably large that if you inscribed every atom in the known universe with a digit, you would effectively be 0% of the way to the number, and if you were able to conceptualize the number in your head, the information density could quite literally cause your head to collapse. And it's not even the largest mathematical number. That goes to a number called 33, which is even more insanely huge. Fun fact, in Magic: The Gathering, there was a long-standing challenge to create the largest finite amount of damage in a normal 60-card deck, assuming the opponent does nothing. Finite is important because it's dead easy to make infinite loops in Magic, or, rather, loops that can be continued for as long as you like. Creating a deck that can do an extremely high amount of damage, but cannot go infinite, is very difficult. Someone found out how to do more than Graham's number of damage in Standard. The deck with the full card set makes that number look like peanuts. Bears don't actually hibernate, they go into a state known as torpor. While similar, the main difference between hibernation and torpor is that animals in torpor can wake easier, if need be. That's why they say never poke a sleeping bear. Astronomer here. A supernova is a star that is massive enough to explode at the end of its life, and one single star that undergoes this process can briefly outshine a galaxy. If one were to occur in our own galaxy, the crazy thing is we would know about it a few hours before the light would reach us. This is because a supernova is triggered when the core of the star collapses under its massive weight, and in the core you get a neutron star created, and that process releases about as many neutrinos as the Sun. Neutrinos are particles that don't interact much with matter unlike light, so they escape the collapsing core instantly. The light, on the other hand, takes a few hours to work through those layers. So basically all the neutrino detectors on Earth would suddenly go haywire from more neutrinos than we have ever seen, and that will tell everyone to run outside and try to be the first to see the first galactic supernova we've seen in centuries.